Hey there, I'm Mark Gray. I'm a professional landscape photographer and I'm currently in Iceland. Just finished up running a photography tour of the awesome ice caves up here. And today I wanted to share with you 6 photography myths that need to be busted. So these myths you may hear being passed around between photographers. Some of them you might even hear in camera stores from the salespeople. But I wanted to set the record straight with some of these and just enlighten some of you out there with this information. So first and foremost, the first myth we're going to talk about is the one you hear that you need to have an expensive camera to take good photos. That's just not true, right? Taking good photos actually comes down to A, the ability of the photographer, and B, being in the right place at the right time. Whether you have a $1,000 camera or a $100,000 camera, really at the end of the day comes down to how big you can print your work. Okay? And this leads in very quickly to myth number 2, which is more megapixels means better photos. Alright? There has been a megapixel race for many years now between all the camera manufacturers, and really more megapixels doesn't mean better photos by any means. Having run photography tours now for over 12 years, I've worked with thousands of photographers, and the reality is that not that many photographers actually print their work. With that in mind, when the end result of all photographs is to end up on social media or on a website, perhaps a photo sharing website, then you just don't need those extra megapixels. Someone like myself, sure, I have a retail gallery, I print my work extremely large, up to 3 meters wide, so megapixels is important to me. But for the average photographer who doesn't really print their work, it doesn't make any difference to web ready images. It just doesn't. So that's myth number 2, completely busted. And myth number 3, always keep the sun behind you. Now this is something that has actually flown in, well, it's originated from portrait photography. Now I'm a landscape photographer, I specialize in landscapes. I do all types of landscapes, but I don't do portrait work. And so we've often had people turn up to our one-day courses and they're surprised when we tell them there's no issue. In fact, it's often a benefit to shoot directly at the sun or side onto the sun. And what that does is often gets the best quality light into your photo. When you shoot side onto the sun, you're going to get light and shade across your subjects. When you're shooting at the sun, you get this beautiful backlighting and quite often some really colourful skies. When you shoot away from the sun for landscapes, it's actually the worst scenario. And that's because everything has got an even amount of light on it and it looks quite flat. Now sure, for portrait work, you don't want half light and half shade across someone's face. So with the sun behind you when you're shooting photos of people outdoors, absolutely, that makes sense. But absolutely not when it comes to landscape photography. So that's myth number 3, busted. Alright, myth number 4. Blue skies are the best conditions for landscape photography. Now this is a funny one, and look, to be honest, it's probably more of a myth that's passed around non-photographers. And the reason I say that is quite often we'll be running a tour or one of our one-day courses, and we'll get the wait staff at the restaurant we go to for lunch might say, oh, it's beautiful, it's blue skies today, awesome for photography. It's actually not the case. The best conditions for photography are when you have intermittent weather, okay, changeable weather. Weather that one minute might be clear, the next you've got clouds and rain, or snow and hail, or whatever it might be. Those sort of conditions, the changeable conditions, will most often give you the best quality light, particularly as you head towards sunset or around sunrise as well, early in the morning. So blue sky days, in my opinion, completely clear blue sky days are one of the worst conditions that you could have for landscape photography. The only worse condition than that would be completely flat overcast light. However, you can still shoot some great scenes in that light, such as waterfalls and rainforests. So really, blue sky days, avoid them like the plague. You need clouds, at least scattered clouds. Some nice shaped clouds will make far more interesting photographs. Okay. Next myth, polarizer filters. Now this one here is a Nissi filter, fantastic quality. It's one of their Pro Nano Enhanced CPLs, and polarizer filters are an interesting filter. They are the most important filter a landscape photographer can own, but they're easy to use, but they're difficult to master. Now, one of the myths that you'll hear about polarizer filters, and this is very common in camera stores, people will say, or the salespeople will often say to you, you should never use a polarizer on a wide angle lens. Now, that's absolutely false, right? And this, I can tell you where this comes from. So with a polarizer, it polarizes your scene, and it's most commonly known for making blue skies darker, all right? The wider your lens is, the more uneven that effect will be. So you'll get a dark area of the sky when it's set to full strength and a lighter area of the sky. And this is referred to commonly as hot spots. So if you're getting hot spots in your scene, it's pretty simple. With your polarizer, you just back the strength off. In fact, you can back it off so that it only polarizes the foreground and leaves the sky alone. So for that reason, absolutely use a polarizer on a wide angle lens, as wide as you want. All right. I have plenty of shots in my collection that have been shot in rainforests. There's not even a minuscule amount of sky in the shot. There's no sky at all. And yet the polarizer has taken the glare out of everything completely and made such a better photograph and a better exposure than it would have done without the polarizer. Okay, so that's an absolute myth. That's where it comes from. But by all means, don't be afraid to use polarizers on any lens at all in your kit. Last but not least, myth number 6. Stitching panoramas. So this has sort of flowed on from the past of people stitching panos around 40 to 50 millimeters. The idea now that you can't stitch with wide angle lenses is again a myth, okay? It is something that was justified once upon a time, but software has come so far now that there's absolutely no problems with stitching with a wide angle lens. The only thing you will encounter, which will need some heavy editing afterwards, if you are stitching with wide angle lenses, when you have straight lines in your shot. For example, if you're shooting down a pier. Okay, those straight lines, the wider the lens is, the straight lines will then actually become curved in the scene. And there's some tricks that can be done using Photoshop or other software to correct those curvature issues. So if you are shooting straight lines, it can often be better to use a longer focal length, but I've shot a number of stitched panoramas over the years now, down to as low as 14 millimeters with each frame, and they create an awesome field of view that is so much wider than the widest lenses on the market, and that is the real benefit of stitching with a wide angle lens. Alright guys, well there's 6 photography myths for you, all busted, right? Obviously I've explained where they've come from, how they've developed, and hopefully that gives you an insight as to why those things are simply false. If you like the content we've been sharing lately guys, we would love you to hit subscribe. We'd love to get a few more followers and keep being able to do this and providing you guys with some fantastic information as you're learning more and more about photography. Hope you have a great week. Cheers.